Hello everybody, welcome back to another Mortal Jellyfish video. Now today we're talking about the should you buy Pyro video. That's what we're going to be doing today. Now I know when I say buy, I don't mean you need to buy all the ranks in the battle pass here. You don't need to buy all these ranks. Obviously you could just buy the battle pass and grind them, but because you have to buy something, that's why we still title it with should you buy. That said, I do make Bed Wars content almost every day, so make sure to like and subscribe for more Bed Wars content. With all that though, I do want to just say the format of this video, we start off with some pros, we work into some cons, and then we do a should you buy opinionated part at the very end. But for this kit, we are going to briefly talk about how the kit works and stuff over some testing gameplay we were doing. It got a bit wild, so I don't know. Take a little bit of it with a grain of salt. It's a little wild. The testing got a little crazy. That's typically what happens when too many people are in a lobby testing things. But either way, we got some good information, and, you know, I've been playing the kit since yesterday, so we got a decent bit of information. And that said, though, we're going to hop into that testing gameplay and briefly talk about some mechanics on how the Pyro kit works. So in the testing, the first thing we did here is kind of a damage test. It starts off with hitting for 3s, and then when you upgrade it, it still hits for 3s, which was really weird to me that first upgrade doesn't mean anything. And then when you upgrade it again, you'll see that it starts doing 6 damage, and that's pretty decent for somebody against no armor. Obviously, armor is going to affect all of these numbers more so, but there's no reason spending 20 minutes talking about it. And then when you get it up to there, you can see it does 9, and then you'll get into armor penetration. The thing can get 40% armor penetration if you spend that many embers. Now, a quick thing to note here is to get embers, you need to kill people either with the fire, or you need to kill them with the brittle buff. You can see how they get a little fire emblem like glowing above their head. That means they're brittle, which brittle is basically a damage increase upon the first hit you hit them. If you kill them with fire or that, you're guaranteed an ember, which is what you use to upgrade the flamethrower. But at the same time, I've noticed that if you kill them slightly after the ember ends, or slightly after you've recently burned them, you'll also get it. If somebody else gets the kill, sometimes you get them, I think. I don't know. Getting embers can be a little weird, but you do get them pretty often. And here we're just testing the range, and you can see as we upgrade the range, we can hit a bit further away. So yeah, talking about that, there's 3 upgrades you can do. You can upgrade 1, which is the fire damage. You can upgrade range, and then you can upgrade the brittle % damage. So the fire damage is the damage the flamethrower itself is doing, which you can see hitting people. Range is obviously going to increase the range of it, and as you see that the range increases, it actually hits people even farther on the sides and stuff as well. It gets pretty wild where it starts to hit people, to be honest. And then, of course, brittle damage is that debuff that they take when it puts that fire above their head, which means the first hit you hit them with with a sword or whatever is going to be increased by a % amount of damage, which is also the same thing you'll see here coming up, where I'll hit somebody and it'll do like 50 damage when they're in like no armor and stuff. So yeah, the brittle stuff is pretty good. So just a quick explanation over like what the best upgrades are in what scenarios. So when I play Pyro personally, I find that like brittle is typically the best. Brittle, you can light them on fire real quick, cancel the animation of your flamethrower by just swapping to your sword, and then when you swap to your sword, basically that first hit's gonna hit them really hard. And like I said, if they have no armor, you can like hit somebody for like 50 damage with a wood sword with brittle. It's super nasty. Of course, it does get weaker with armor, but it's still pretty strong end game. I believe that like it came out to like 17 damage against Emerald, and normally Emerald you're only doing like 8 damage against with an Emerald sword, I think. So yeah, it's pretty solid. That said, sometimes I do think fire damage is good too. So fire damage is going to be good for the fact that you can shoot the fire through the walls, and if you're shooting fire through the walls, then obviously, you know, you're shooting them through a wall with flamethrower, and you're getting damage on them, and they can't hit you because you're through a wall. Range is also going to help with this. If you have range, it's going to help you light people on fire before they get to you, and it's also going to allow you to burn people a little bit easier through walls. Range and brittle are probably the main 2 you're going to use for just like quick lighting people on fire and then switching to your sword and getting in a sword fight, and then you get the upper hand. But sometimes I find that fire damage is pretty good when people are just camping inside their base, and you just build a range and fire flamethrower, and you just keep burning them over and over through the walls till they die. That said, we're going to hop into the gameplay portion of this video now, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons of this kit. We got that Pyro gameplay rolling here, and we're going to go ahead and just talk about the pros and cons here. Now I have 5 pros and I got 4 cons. There's probably more pros and cons outside of these ones. So yeah, if you guys got any extra ones, make sure to leave them in the comments below. People do find them helpful. Sometimes I find them helpful, depending on what they are. And yeah, that said, I'm going to hop into our 5 pros here, and then we'll get into the cons. So starting off with the first pro, and that's just brittle makes the start of most fights in your favor. So if you start off, as you see somebody coming to you, you pull out your flamethrower, you light him on fire, and then you swap to your sword before the animation of flamethrower finishes, because you know you're gonna have to sword fight, and flamethrower will get you killed if you don't animation swap, by the way. So you animation swap and you hit him. That first hit where the brittle debuff increases your damage is devastating. Like, it hits so hard. Even when you're maxed out flamethrower and like they're in emerald armor, it still makes you do like twice the amount of damage. So it'll do like 16 damage and they're in full emerald with an emerald sword. So that's pretty solid considering it normally does like 7 or 8. So yeah, brittle damage always tends to give you the favor in the fight. Like if they're rushing at you and you brittle them and then you hit them, that first hit typically sets you ahead. Unless things go really bad or they really outgear you, you're probably going to win the fight. So that's the first pro. And then the second pro we got here is you can hit people through walls with fire. I found out this is like really nice, like if you got people camping in a base or they're walling stuff off. If you got the range, or sometimes you don't even need the range, as long as you get close enough to the wall and you stick the flamethrower right in it, you can shoot the fire through the walls and hit people. So if they're just base camping, hiding in their base, just torch them through the walls, boys. This also leads to a different type of strategy where you don't approach the base where they can get out of. You approach it from like a backside so you can hit them with the flamethrower as long as possible to get some free damage on them, and then they come out to you and then you can actually fight them. And that'll give you a head start in damage if you do that too. So it's also got a better playstyle than just burning people who are camping. And that's going to lead into the third pro here, and that's that you can just spam your flamethrower with teammates. So if you're playing squads, which is where I think this kit probably excels pretty well in, I could see it playing in solos though. You brittle somebody, you hit them, and then you got the advantage. So it's probably a good solo kit too. But in squads, you can really just sit back there and just spam the flamethrower, especially if you get some range and the brittle buff. You just sit back there spamming your flamethrower, constantly lining up with the brittle buff, debuff, and then your teammates hit them and do like a huge chunk of damage while you're just spamming the flamethrower. So that works out really well too. So I guess in a sense, it's a really solid support kit to making enemies weaker for your teammates to fight as well. And then that's going to take us into the fourth pro here, and that's can scale really well with more kills. So you need to get embers from kills with the flamethrower or the ember debuff kind of thing. And this thing scales really well. Like, it's got a lot. Like, I think you can dump like 30 or 40 embers into the thing. And the whole time it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. More fire damage, more range, more brittle percent damage, some armor penetration. And so it just scales up through the game, but you do need a lot of kills for that. But yeah, it can scale, which is super nice. So that means it doesn't really fall off super hard late game. It can actually hold up late game and still be pretty useful. And that's going to bring us into our last pro here, and that's that people find you scary, sometimes. So I've had games where people see that I'm Pyro, and just, you know, you hit them with the flamethrower, and they're not even crossed on their island yet, and they just start screaming. They're like, ah, ah, and then, like, I've had people just jump off the map to try and get away from me. Like, I understand Pyro maybe is a little scary, it's rank 50, but I don't know if it's that scary. But some people do run from you and they jump off the map, so yeah, it's kind of a funny pro, but I had to add it because it's happened a few times. It's not just like one guy did it. It's actually happened a few times where people just are scared to fight you because you're Pyro. And then we're going to move into the cons to balance out those pros now, as usual. So the first con we have is you need 2 emeralds to start working on your flamethrower. So basically, Pyro, the entire game, you need to be working on this flamethrower to keep it getting embers and upgrading it, so that way it stays current. If you have flamethrower late game and you didn't get much embers to upgrade it, it's probably going to feel really weak. So to counteract that, you probably want 2 emeralds from the very first spawn of emeralds. You want to get that flamethrower ASAP. You want to have it right away so you can start working on it. So that's a kind of a con because you're kind of forced to go mid really early on to get that flamethrower. You don't have to, but it makes sense if you're going to play Pyro to be getting the thing that the kit has, if that makes sense. Anyways, that's going to move us into our next con. So our second con is going to be you need embers to unlock upgrades. So sometimes teammates will kill somebody or something, and I just won't get an ember, and it's just like I was like, ugh, no embers. You know, same thing like with Trinity. When Trinity kills somebody else kills your kill as Trinity, and you're like, oh, and I don't get my powers. That's kind of how Pyro feels too. So you get that, like, you need the kills kind of thing sometimes. But yeah, so Embers are needed, and you need quite a bit of them to upgrade, and if you don't get those embers, then your flamethrower is going to start to feel weaker as enemies start to get stronger. And that's going to move us into the third con, and that's that you basically, if you don't have teammates guarding in front of you, you basically have to use the flamethrower and then animation cancel by swapping to your sword. If you don't cancel that animation and you just sit there with flamethrower, you're basically just going to die, unless your flamethrower is like way overpowered and they have no armor. Yeah, because people will just rush you with the sword, even if you flamethrower them. So basically, you just want to flamethrower and then switch and hit them with the brittle debuff, because you're not going to have time to keep burning them unless they're on the other side of a wall or you have teammates in front of you making a wall virtually. So yeah, I think that's something that we have to count as a con, because you can't just torch people. You have to actually swap and play a little bit with your keys, kind of like Jade Kit, when you leap and you jump and you have to swap out of your hammer before you hit the ground, so you don't get locked in that animation. It's kind of the same thing with Pyro. You just want to swap your weapon. Depending on the scenario. That said, we're going to move into the fourth con here, and let's say your damage falls off pretty heavily with armor. Now, this is to be expected with anything. Once people start to get armor in this game, I'd say like iron, diamond, and up. Like, leather's pretty weak, but iron is pretty tough, and then diamond and emerald, those get pretty wild. But, you know, your damage is going to fall off. Everything falls off. Damage in this game really falls off really hard with armor. Like, as soon as people start slapping on armor, they're super tanky. And the same thing happens with flamethrower, although I do want to note that even if they're in full emerald, and if you have the full brittle tree maxed out in your flamethrower, so because it's emerald armor, we're considering late game flamethrower here, it'll actually still hit for like 16 with the first brittle with an emerald sword hit, and they normally hit for like 8, so it's like having an extra hit at the start of a fight, so that's not too shabby. But yeah, on that note, we're going to move into the portion where I talk about whether you should buy or should not buy this kit. Obviously, you just have to buy the battle pass and grind for it, or you could buy the ranks if you choose to do that. But yeah, that's where we're going to go, so I will see you guys in the portion where we talk about should you buy it or not. Alright, the juicy, the spicy part of this video where I give you my opinion on whether you should or should not buy Pyro kit. And this one, I think, like, just straight up is pretty solid of a kit. Like, I actually do enjoy this kit a fair bit. I don't know if it's my favorite kit, but it is a fun kit to play nonetheless. Just being able to cook people real quick and then slap them real hard, or just being able to sit back there and spam fire, it's just cool, you know, just on a cool level, just minus every game mechanic in the world, just sitting there with a flamethrower and you just press it at your base and you're like, got a flamethrower. It's cool. So it's fun. Fire is fun. Don't play with it, kids. It's bad. Anyways, it's a super fun kit, and it is pretty strong too. Outside of just being cool and fun, it is a pretty strong kit. I know when like people have no armor, they'll come at me. I'll just light them with the flamethrower, hit them with a wood sword for like 50 damage, and that's instantly just like gonna guarantee you win the fight. That's like 2.5 hits of a wood sword. So, you know, I mean, you're getting way ahead real quick. So basically, you can really dumpster people with this kit. It's really funny. They'll come at you. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill this guy," and then you just light them on fire and you hit them with that brittle damage, and it's just like boom, you just clap them and they don't know what hit them because you hit them like a truck. So yeah, should you buy it or not? I give this kit a pretty big yes. I think it's a pretty solid kit, and honestly, it's one of the better kits in the battle pass in my opinion. So I know on my tier list before I had the kit, I rated it pretty low from what I had seen and what I knew about it, but after playing it, it's a pretty solid kit. I wouldn't say it's the best kit in the entire game, but it is a pretty solid kit nonetheless. On that note, guys, that is the end of today's video, and so yeah, it's time to shout out those members. So first up, we got Mama Peace, thank you for being a member of the channel. We got Redwood Deadwood, thank you for being a part of the channel. And then we got Insolence Axolotl, I think is how you say that. I'm probably butchering that name. I apologize, I'll learn how to say it someday. But yeah, thanks to those 3 people for being members. It's pretty crazy that we have 3 members now. I never really expected us to get that many members, but now we have 3. So that's pretty cool. So thanks for being members and supporting the channel. It does help out a ton. And on that note, guys, I will see you all in the next video or stream. Peace out.